You're watching The Globe on the SABC News Channel, and every Friday night we have a big interview, and today we're chatting to Ambassador Akrina Chihombori-Quao, who's a former African Union permanent representative to the United States, and she's put her name forward to become the next African Union Commission chairperson, and she's talking to us about the role of the AU on the continent. Ambassador, a lot of people across the continent, citizens on the ground, will have lived through some difficult times, whether it was Darfur or in the region here in southern Africa, where accusations that certain countries have been leveled against them for human rights abuses. And they look out and say, help us, but it doesn't seem the help comes, particularly from bodies like the African Union. Why is that?
Well, first of all, you must understand the constitution of the African Union. That's where really the problem begins. The constitution clearly states that the union cannot interfere with the affairs of the member states. So that's already a limiting factor. And African Union itself has no sovereignty. So those are some of the issues that I think at some point they need to be looked at. But there are limitations in terms of how far African Union can go. But that does not stop a savvy AU leader to create those relationships. In anything that you do, it's about relationships. Even the most difficult situations, if you got good communication skills and you can build those bridges, you can create those relationships, you can overcome, you can go through and handle any situation. It's about relationship building and good communication skills.
All right, so you say that the AU's hands are tied in for want of a better word. But so you have, let's say, a delinquent leader in some country, and the citizens are saying, please help us remove this person. He's been rigging elections for so many years, and now he's oppressing us. And then you see a coup happening, and you become more active at that point. Surely before the coup happens, things need to be taking place, and it just doesn't seem to be happening. What will you do as a chairperson to make sure that we don't see coups, and that when we say we're going to silence the guns, we actually do?
I think when you begin to see the first signs of problems brewing in a particular country, that's when conversations, and I'm talking meaningful conversations that actually take us from point A to point B, need to begin. When you allow things to wait until they get to a boiling point, that's when diplomacy fails. Diplomacy is very similar to healthcare in the sense that as doctors, we are treating patients and trying our best to keep them from ending up in the intensive care and in some cases from dying. Well, diplomacy is much the same way. We are using diplomacy to keep us from going to war. We use words. We communicate, effective communicate. You work with people to keep them from getting to the worst state, which is war, and of course those coups. So poorly managing that situation, and again, that falls in the hands of the African Union Commission Chair to have known that there was a fire brewing in Mali 2 years ago, 3 years ago. The question is, what did he do? Something should have been done back then. Communication, communication, communication.
But, you know, these people who are quite belligerent and are thirsty for power don't listen. What do you do? Communication won't be enough sometimes.
There's more than just communication. You also look at the whole package. Look at the economic situation. What are the underlying causes of the situation that is on the ground? When it's all said and done, what people want are jobs. They want to be able to feed their children, house their children, send their children to school. People want the basics. Look at what are the underlying causes of what is causing what's going on in that particular country. What is causing the instability? It's not just talking to the head of state, it's looking at the whole country and the whole region in some cases. And also saying at the continental level, what can the continent do to also deal with these issues, not only in this country or that country, but in all of Africa. When you deal with certain issues, especially if you were to implement all the decisions that the heads of states have approved, you'll find that some of the issues could be addressed. But the biggest problem is the decisions that are being made by the heads of states, majority of them are not being implemented. So we're also failing the African heads of states when we don't implement their decisions. They have done their part, and I'm using the example of the Continental Free Trade Area. If this Continental Free Trade Area is properly implemented, it's going to solve a lot of problems in so many African countries. That's how we have to look at it, a global continental approach to Africa's problem, not just Mali, because if it's not in Mali today, it's going to be in another country tomorrow. Let's look for a solution, a permanent solution to some of these problems. We can't keep having hotspots throughout the continent year in and year out. That's unacceptable. We need to move on to the next level. And a nice strategy, well planned, well orchestrated, well executed plan from the continental level is what is being called for.
All right, let's talk about this Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is being hailed as one of the best crafted in the world, and great minds have gone into it. And on paper, it looks amazing. And I think that the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? And making it happen and enacting it in a way that it does have a meaningful change. We've had smaller regional pacts, but they haven't delivered. So why will this one deliver, do you think?
Well, I'll be very honest with you. I don't think we're ready as a continent to implement the African Continental Free Trade Area. And the reason is very simple. The capacity is not there. There are more doctors Ghanaian doctors in New York City than in all of Ghana. There are more Nigerian doctors in LA than in all of Nigeria. The same is true with educators, with engineers. So the reality is the capacity that we need to build the Africa that we want is not on the continent. There's some of it on the continent, but the capacity that's in the diaspora, we have to have a system, we have to have a plan of bringing the diaspora back. We must reverse that brain drain if we are to truly build a sustainable Africa. So for that reason, I say we are not quite ready. And what saddens me is we are opening up our continent so others from outside, from the east and the west, can come in and this time take over like wildfire. So that's the unfortunate part. While we appreciate the Continental Free Trade Area, the biggest fear on my end is that we are opening the continent this time to be completely taken over by the people from the east and the people from the west, if we do not have a plan. As of now, I've not seen any plan from Chairman Faki in terms of how he plans to implement the Continental Development Plan as we implement the Continental Free Trade Area. I've not heard that. If it's out there, I've not seen it, but there is a need for a coordinated Continental Development Plan, which we can say, as Black people, as Africans, we are on the driver's seat of the Continental Development Agenda. If we do not control the Continental Development Agenda, it's finished for us. That's something we cannot afford to do. What's in Africa belongs to our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come. It is their inheritance. We must defend it by any means necessary.
All right, so as we start to wrap up this conversation, we talk about Africa and being African, but often we see a lot of nationalistic, tribalistic, and sometimes even religious division across the continent. How do you start to try and bring all of this together and recognize and genuinely believe in the African unity ideal?
Again, it goes back to the African Union. African Union can set up the tone. Our youth, there could be programs that can integrate our youth. Youth from Nigeria having to do work in Kenya, youth in Kenya having to do work in Zimbabwe and Egypt and across the continent. It starts with a continental agenda that says, 10 years from now, where do we need to be? Of course, if you keep people isolated in their own countries, that's going to continue. The spirit of nationalism is going to continue. A strategy that's driven from the African Union that clearly has in mind complete, total integration. It can be accomplished with a definite timeline to say 5 years from now, where are we? 10 years from now, where are we? Measurable results. 30 years from now, no African should be bothered about what country am I from. They are Africans, and they can.
All right, and that's where we'll leave it. Thank you very, very much indeed for joining us and sharing your thoughts with us. Ambassador Akrina Chihombori-Quao, thank you so much indeed for your time, and we wish you the best of luck with your ambitions and endeavours.
Thank you, son. Appreciate you. Thank you for having me.